This Black Friday, I'm gonna head on over to bunnymuffins.lol/meta to get the freest and best tier list for Teamfight Tactics for patch 14.23c. So there are a couple of changes in the recent week because they had a C patch, believe it or not. They had nerfs to Violet, some anomalies, and some bug fixes. So overall, I think this is a great change because right now, dare I say it, it feels like there's a lot of viable things out there. If you want to reroll, you can reroll. If you want to fast 9, you can fast 9. If you want to play around 4 costs, you can play around 4 costs. Literally in the S tier right now, everything is represented 1, 2, and 3 cost reroll, 4 costs, and 5 costs. And there are a ton of vertical comps that I think play a little bit differently than we have in the past, which keeps them a little bit more fresh. So let's get right into it. In the S tier, Ambusher, Camille, and Smeech gotta be my top comp right now. It's so easy to play, very powerful. You just have to be uncontested, which makes it a little bit difficult. Blackrose Flex, which is a fast 9 comp. I mean, if you hit it, you hit it. Everyone's seen that this team comp wins so many games. Oftentimes, if you look at the top 4, you might see some rerolls and you might see the Blackrose comp, and what comp's probably gonna win out, unless something ridiculous happens, the Blackrose comp with 2-star legendaries probably will win. Heimerdinger Flex is another great option. Dominator, this is a new take on Blackrose with Silco carry. Family reroll, very easy to play, also very powerful. If anyone caught the augment video that I posted from a couple of days ago, the person we were watching, who is ranked 3 on North America right now, was pretty much hard forcing family in as many games as possible. Kogmaw Scar reroll, this is my favorite comp personally. I've had it work really, really well. But I'd say these are the top comps in the meta right now. You'll see probably one of these in every single one of your games. In the A tier, there's still gonna be very solid comps, but they need a little more to make them work. For example, Bruiser Mundo I think is one of the best comps if you get the Bruiser emblem, because Bruiser Mundo with Twitch carry, if you hit both of them 2-star, it's pretty much unstoppable. Like, I'm not even exaggerating. The Mundo's so tanky, the Twitch obviously just burns everyone down over time. There are a couple Twitch players out there. I don't personally like Twitch, but that's not gonna stop me from rating this comp really high. Different comps work for different people depending on what type of playstyles you use. And I've always been more of like an AP type of player. But both the Twitch comps pretty solid right now. Bruiser Mundo being the stronger one. Emissary, Sorcerer, Nami. This is a very underrated comp right now. Also pretty underplayed. I played one game of it. I kind of hard forced it and it worked out really, really well. I could only imagine what happens if you do it in like a really good spot. I have seen some other players play it, but if you were to think about a comp on the rise right now, it would be this one. And this is going to be a 3-cost reroll with Nami, Swain, sometimes Gangplank. Rebel Zoe's pretty solid if you get the +1 Rebel. Emissary, Ambessa, Corki. If there's an AD comp that I go to, it's going to be the Corki comps, either scrap Corki or with the Emissary Ambessa. Essentially, if you hit the emissaries, go the Emissary version. It is better than the scrap version, but if you get a scrap emblem, go for the scrap Corki. Visionary Heimerdinger is going to be the next comp in the A tier. It's a little lower, even though it's still a good comp because there are so many other comps that use Heimerdinger, Blackrose Flex and Heimerdinger Flex, much better versions of Heimerdinger. In my opinion, Enforcer Vibe pretty solid, Sorcerer Zoe pretty solid. These two vertical comps play a little bit differently than what we have in the past because you both need an emblem and you need to hit the 5 cost to get to that really good breakpoint of 8 Sorcerer or 8 Enforcer. So I'd only go for these in games where you could actually go fast 9 or get to level 8, or maybe you have like hard commit where you can guarantee the 5 cost and you also somehow get an emblem. Conqueror, very good if you get it in the right spots, and then Form Swapper Gangplank, it's just going to be a Form Swapper reroll. Similar to the Emissary Sorcerer Nami build, but this one's more focused on Gangplank and Swain, and also more so around hitting Jace for 4 Form Swapper. Pretty hit or miss, but if you do hit, it's extremely powerful. In the B tier, we have Nocturne Akali reroll. Not my favorite comp, not that great. When it gets pushed up into the A tier, I'll fill out the image for it. Pit Fighter Vibe, no one's really playing this because all the Pit Fighters are being taken by the family comp. And lastly, we have Form Swapper Elise. Elise was just OP before. She's still pretty strong, but she just fits in much better comps, which is why I'm gonna leave her down here. If you do hit the comp, it still does well because you're running 4 Form Swappers, so that assumes you hit Jace. As for some of the weird comps, such as the hero augments and traits, I think the best one by far is going to be Mad Chemist Singe. Absolutely bonkers with the Morellonomicon. As for all the trait augments, I mean, if you get the champions, it's good. If you don't, then don't go for it. Like, if it gives you 2-2-stars or you have like a champion duplicator, then go for it. But don't just take them if you have none of the units for them. So those will always be good in the right circumstances, but I think people are overtaking them. Chem Baron Cashout, a little weaker than normal right now compared to the other fortune-esque traits, but I played a game of it. I got really lucky. If you get really lucky, you're gonna get a good Chem Baron cash out. Try to get at least 500 plus, you pretty much auto win or at least get auto second with a very high chance of winning. Like I just played a game of this. I had 7 Chem Baron on stage 3-6, so I got the cash out very easily and I won that game, but I got lucky, you know? I had to get a Chem Baron emblem and get a legendary. Built different, it's okay. I'm not gonna say it's good, but if you hit it in the right spots, which is having a lot of upgrades before you take it, and if you're on a high econ portal such as gold subscription, then it's going to be good. But if you're just taking built different just to be a little bit different, I would not do that at all. But let's get into how to play each and every one of these comps. We're going to start off with Smeech and Camille reroll. So Camille's going to be the main star of the show. She has a bunch of different items that can work on her. Honestly, I haven't found that much of a difference between the items I build. Like normally I just slam whatever I can just to get more value out of them in the early game. But if you have any combination of like Edge of Night, Hand of Justice, Titan's Resolve, Bloodthirster, Sterex, things like that, it's gonna be good. Like Hand of Justice probably is the best item because Ambushers crit already, and Hand of Justice is the best item with crit, and it gives her healing, which is exactly what you need. But literally every item combination I've tried on her, they all do like around the same, you know? It's like if you build the item earlier, you're gonna get more value out of them. So if you have a belt and sword earlier, and even though I said like maybe Sterex Gauge might be the worst one out of the 4, you still build it and put it on her. Like it's not going to change your decisions that much. But if you have a sword and you're going onto the carousel and you have the choice between a belt or a chain, I'd go for the chain, build an Edge of Night. But one good news about this whole thing is that Smeech can use all the items that are slightly worse on Camille. So like Sterex Gauge, Smeech loves, Bloodthirster, Smeech loves. So build a lot of the melee bruiser items on Camille and Smeech, 3-star them, and you're good to go. One thing to note is that you could also go for Leona 3-star. I don't see too many people going for this, but it's actually pretty decent because you're rolling for 2 cost units. And if you happen to get a lot of Leonas, you could use her as like your tank item holder. But if you don't get her, you could ditch her and play a different Sentinel instead. Some people like to play Illaoi, for example, but it really doesn't make that much of a difference. So if you have the gold for it, go for the Leona 3. If you don't, you could keep her 2-star and then replace her with Illaoi later. Another thing people are sometimes doing is putting Powder in the front line because Powder, her little monkey that she casts out, is so slow that people put her in the front line so it hits units faster. That's optional, but some people have been doing that. I do it more in the family comp than I do in the ambusher comp, but pretty much this comp is really easy to play. Just do 2 cost reroll, hit Camille 3-star. If you can get Smeech, go for Smeech 3-star. If not, power level up, go for Jinx instead. If you do get an ambusher emblem, you get to 5 ambusher very easily. That way you don't even need to hit Jinx. The best holder for it is going to be a legendary unit. Literally any legendary unit uses it extremely well. But what you can also do is take out Loris and put in Vi instead for Enforcer, and then put Ambusher on Vi. Vi is a really good holder of Ambusher emblem, but you don't normally play her in this comp without it. So that's another thing to keep in mind whenever you're doing this. And you also need to make sure as you're doing the 2 cost reroll that you find some way to stabilize during stage 3. Sometimes you natural a Camille 2-star, in which case you don't really have to roll at all, or you maybe have perfect items on her as a 1-star, and sometimes you can survive during stage 3, but you pretty much don't want to like lose every single round. If not, the rest of your game is going to be a little bit rough. So scout the lobby, see how strong everyone is, stabilize a little bit on stage 3 if you need to, and if you don't, just start slow rolling and hopefully you get Camille 3-star pretty quickly. Another thing to note is that you need to find a good time to all in. Sometimes people do it on stage 4-1, sometimes people do it a bit later on stage 4. It really depends how many copies of Camille you have and how low your life total is. If you're on like 2 lives, let's say you're at like 25 health or something like that, like you probably should roll down to hit Camille 3, right? But if you're like 2 copies off Camille 3, I would roll a little bit past 50, see if you hit another one, and then roll down if you do. I think that's like a big mistake people make when they play reroll. They don't know when to all in, but over time, you kind of get more used to that feeling. Next comp up we have is Blackrose Flex. This is like one of the standard comps in the game. It's like one of the most popular things you can see right now. A couple of different versions. There's like Heimer, Elise, Zoe. There's also a Silco version we'll get into a bit later. But pretty much the base is just all the Blackrose units. So we have Elise, Vladimir, LeBlanc, Cassio, and Morgana as the base over here. pretty much always play these. And then you complement it with some sort of AP carry. Oftentimes it's going to be Heimerdinger. Sometimes it could be Elise, sometimes Zoe, sometimes Silco. And then super late game, it's always going to be Malzahar and LeBlanc as those like really big powerhouses that take your team over the top. And if you manage to hit those at 1-star, you pretty much get like top 5. And if you hit them 2-star, top 3, top 2, even winning the game. Of course, it depends on what your augments are, what items you have on them, things like that. But this is pretty much the base of the comp. And then you just add in a bunch of different legendaries. So what's really popular that people do is doing what's called a fast 9. It essentially means like you go fast 8 and then you roll like a tiny bit of gold if you even need to. And then you go straight to level 9. So sometimes people can sit at like a Heimerdinger 1-star if they've been win streaking all game and they're at like 80 health at stage 4. Sometimes people just natural a lot of upgrades in the mid game. Maybe you have like a 2-star Cassio, 2-star Nunu, and you have like 4 Blackrose out there. Maybe you have like a 2-star Cassio, 2-star Blitzcrank who's a Dominator, and you have like 4 Blackrose out there. That could also take you through stage 4 and into a fast 9. Assuming you use Cassio as your main damage dealer and Blitzcrank as your main tank. Lots of ways to get there, but essentially once you do get to level 9, ideally you have at least 40 gold to roll with because legendary units are pretty expensive and you're looking for 4 costs in a lot of cases. But if you get hit that point at like stage 4 or 5 and get like a Malzahar 1, your game is pretty much set because you just put an anomaly on Malzahar. I think the best one is going to be the one that like chills and stuns people, but pretty much anything works on Malzahar because he's just such a good unit right now, and you could easily take over the game like that. I'd say this comp, in terms of difficulty, it's like medium difficulty. It is difficult in that it's a flex comp, but like the base is pretty much the same. And sometimes being a flex comp is actually easy because in this case you play pretty much all the same units, you just change out who your carry is, and they pretty much all use the same item, so it's nothing too complicated. You don't have to like gigabrain a transition or anything like that, and it's just like a pretty solid comp overall. But if you want more details, like head on over to the website bunnymuffins.lol/meta. You could see all the different item recommendations, or you could like check out the Explorer tool as well on teamfight.lol, where you can look at all the data around these comps. The next comp up we have is going to be the Heimerdinger Flex build. It's another Heimerdinger build. Some people like playing it with 5 Academies, some people like playing it with 6 Sentinel. Both versions work. It really depends if you can make use of the Academy items. Normally the Academy items are like 1 AP item, 1 tank item, 1 AD item. So what you end up doing is putting the AP item on Heimerdinger, putting the AD item on Ezreal, and then putting the tank item on whoever. Obviously, if you have Jace, he could use any of those items also, but sometimes we don't have Jace because we're only playing 4 Academy. But here you just run 4 Sentinel plus all the Academy units, Heimerdinger as main carry, Heimerdinger as the anomaly user. In the bottom version here, this is with 6 Sentinel. If you don't have Rumble, you could use like Singed in the meantime. What's really nice about both of these boards is that you get Rebel in there as well with Aurelia, Alawi, and Ezreal. And in this build, you could also run something like Corki. Corki's also an artillerist, so if you have a bunch of AD and AP items, you could kind of flex all your items in this build. Kind of reminds me of the Karma Fiora comp, where if you get AP items, there's an AP item holder. If you get AD items, there's an AD item holder. And if you get tank items, there's a tank. So that's one thing that's kind of cool about this bottom comp over here. I will say that Corki isn't really that great of a primary carry. He's great as a secondary. I like putting utility items on him. Something like red buff is really nice, even though Heimerdinger is a really good red buff applier. But for my Heimerdinger, I'd rather have like 3 pure carry items on him because he's going to be doing the bulk of your damage. But just do a standard fast 8 for this because you're playing around 4 costs, and that's pretty much all there is to that. Next comp up we have is Dominators. This is probably one of my favorite comps right now. I played this with 6 Dominator after watching one of my friends play it. I think he's like ranked 25 in, I forget what server, it's like Oceania. It's like one of the ones in the other side of the world. But if you ever get Dominator emblem, you just get to 6 Dominators so easily, and there's so many like power users in the Dominator comp. Like if you think about all the Dominator units, like Blitzcrank, solid tank, Mundo, obviously like the main tank, Mordekaiser, he's a legendary, so he has to be good, right? And then you have Silco, very good AP item user, just generic 4 cost unit, that's AP, and then Cassio, great trait bot for Blackrose. So pretty much all the Dominator units are contributing something to the team, which is why I think like the 6 Dominator version is so powerful. And then of course you just complement it with the other Blackrose units, and there's just like a lot of power in this comp here. Like utility items on LeBlanc, I put the Static Shiv on her. Morello's pretty good on Silco, and then Mundo obviously going to be your main tank. If you do have like extra items, drop them on Elise or Mordekaiser, depending on who's 2-star. And if you get extra tank items, drop them on Garen. But 6 Dominator, very powerful, but you need the emblem. The weaker version is going to be the 5 Blackrose version. When I say weaker, it's only because it's missing the emblem, but instead you're just playing like the regular Blackrose build, which is obviously one of the top comps out there. And then you play the extra Blackrose and you could add in a bunch of different legendaries also. If you see Malzahar, you could still play him. Malzahar is probably like the best late game AP carry. And pretty much whatever you did with the Heimerdinger Blackrose comp before, you could do with this over here. But only go for this comp if you have the Dominator emblem, if you want to go for the 6 Dominator, and only go for the bottom version if you are actually able to fast 9, because it does revolve around a bunch of 5 costs. Next build up we have is going to be the family build. My favorite build right now, because it is Thanksgiving after all, and I spent like half of my Thanksgiving day just like hard forcing family. Part of it was for the meme, part of it is because it's a decent comp, but essentially, like, even though they nerfed Violet, she's still very, very good. Essentially, you just drop every AD bruiser item you can think of on her, so Sterex, Bloodthirster, Titans, Hand of Justice, Edge of Night, things like that. Put her on the side, put a bunch of attack speed items on Draven, tank items on Vander or Darius, whoever's 3-star, and put in as many pit fighters as possible. She will carry, and if you get the 4-star anomaly, it's still very, very good. It's probably the best one on her still. But you have a couple of other options if you don't want to hard force it. There's the one that gives damage amplification based on like how many 3-stars you have. Another good one is like invisibility because she de-aggros and then she heals up all the way. Lots of different things you could take, honestly, but like if you can get the 4-star one, like go for it if you can afford to. I probably wouldn't roll 60 gold for it anymore, whereas before the hotfix I would have. Another thing people are doing right now is putting Powder in the front line for reasons I stated before. Her cast animation is so slow that you want her up front so that she actually does something. And some people are even itemizing Powder a lot instead of their Draven, but I think Draven's a bit better to do, because if you get a lot of bows, which Draven wants 3 bows, let's say you get 4 of them, you could use one of them to make a Titan's Resolve for Violet, or even ones for like Vi or Savika if you get them later on. But if you get a Powder 3-star and you're pretty far from Draven, like definitely you could build AP items on Powder. But honestly, the secondary carry, I don't really care too much about them. I mainly am just focused on my Violet items. Also, one person in the YouTube comments asked me why I put a tier on Powder. The reason why is because she is a scrap unit, and scrap units, if they have an item component on them, they can transform into a full item. So that's why putting a tier on them or putting like whatever item component you have on them is really useful, because then you get like a free item essentially. So that's why I kind of do that here in case you are wondering. But you could do that on like any scrap unit. That's why on like Corki, as we'll see in the future, he has a bunch of swords. But overall, very solid build. Like some people are hard forcing this every game still. I do it a little bit if I get like a 2-star Violet at the start of the game. I'm lying. I do it if I have like at least 1 or 2 copies, but you probably should only do it if you have like a 2-star Violet at the start of the game and no one's contesting you. Next comp up is going to be my favorite comp of the patch. It's going to be Kogmaw Scar reroll. Every time I play this, I do like at least decently. Like I think my worst placement on this is maybe like a 5th or a 6th, but I have gotten like a lot of seconds. I think I got first like a couple times as well. And one time I got a second because the enemy team had a 3-star Heimerdinger. It's like, I'm not beating that, right? No one's beating that. But I feel like this comp stabilizes really, really, really hard if you have perfect items for everyone. When I played this and when I've watched other people play this, 1-star Kogmaw is really powerful in stages 2 and 3 if you have perfect items for him. Like I've win streaked 100 health with Kogmaw 1-star in stage 2 and 3. And then when I got 2-star Cog in stage 4, I like won like half my stage 4 rounds. Again, I had perfect items on him, so that's the reason why. Oftentimes when I play this, I play with Pandora's items because you need 3 rods in the comp. Sometimes 4 rods if you want an Ionic Spark. But essentially, if you get this item combo, which is Rageblade, Archangel's, Hextech, Gunblade, you will sneak a lot of wins even if your board isn't that upgraded. Like obviously it's better to be upgraded, but that's why I think the comp's so good. It's because you can kind of scrape by with like a crappy board if you have good items. But even though these 3 items are the best combination on Kogmaw, you could play a lot of different ways because you don't have to have perfect items every time. You could do stuff like Gnasher's Tooth, you could do blue buff, you could even do a Shojin. It is worse than what you see here, but it's not like that much worse. Here we also have two versions of the comp. One is with the Firelight emblem, which I think is the best emblem in this comp. If you have the choice between like Watcher Crest and Firelight Crest, I'd go Firelight every time. You pretty much just put it on Garen and he becomes an unkillable tank as well. But the typical version you're going to play is going to be the 6 Watcher version down here if you do not get an emblem. And you pretty much just play Kogmaw, all the Firelights, and all the Watchers. Nothing too complicated there. Obviously go for Kogmaw 3-star, Scar 3-star, 3-cost reroll, and put all your like major tank items on Scar and all your utility tank items on Garen. You could also put your Warmogs on Garen if you get like another good Scar item, such as like Steadfast Heart, because the way Garen works is that with the Emissary buff, he gives 20% of his max health to 2 units next to him. So if you put the Warmogs on Garen, you like kind of give part of it back to your Scar anyways. So Warmog is Garen's like favorite item. But if you don't have that, like you don't have 3 tank items for Scar, like just put the Warmogs on Scar. It's still really, really, really good on him. And as for anomalies, there are 2 standout anomalies that I want to take note of. 1000 cuts is so good on Kogmaw. That's the one where you deal true damage. I think it's 15 or 30 damage, and each time you attack an enemy or like the same enemy, it adds on another stack. So if you have like a Giga tank on the other team, such as like a 5,000 health Mundo, Kogmaw will eventually be doing like 500 true damage to that Mundo if he gets enough stacks on him for the 1000 cuts. Another great one is called like Slow Cooker or Slow Cooking on Scar. And that one's really good because Scar lives so long and he jumps around the map. That's the anomaly where you deal magic damage to people around your tank unit or whoever you put the anomaly on, and it expands every 6 seconds. That anomaly made my Scar do more damage than my Kogmaw, and Scar was still like a super tank. So those are some things to consider whenever you're playing this. Another good one, if you do not have like a Rage Blade, the anomaly that gives a lot of attack speed and more attack speed on cast is really nice. That way you kind of get like a pseudo Rage Blade. But there are a ton of good options on this comp because like Kogmaw and Scar can use a bunch of different things. But just do 3-cost reroll on this. Try to get perfect items on Kogmaw, and then whatever tank items you can on Scar and Garen. Next build up we have is going to be the A tiers. A bit of a drop off because they're either a bit worse or they are rarer. For example, Bruiser Mundo, pretty rare comp because you need the emblem, and it's not like so super broken that it's pushed to the S tier. But it is a very strong comp because Mundo's absolutely disgusting with the Bruiser emblem because he just turns into a super tank and no one can kill him. So what you do is you play Mundo, you put Anomaly on him, and then you put a red buff on your Twitch, and Twitch will attack pretty much everything on the map and slowly burn everything down while Mundo kind of tanks everything. And that's like a tried and true combo in every set of TFT, right? It's like you have one person that burns everyone down and then one tank that kind of buys time for the burn to kind of tick. And that's that. So another thing you want on Twitch is going to be a Rage Blade. Rage Blade's going to be Twitch's best item because, again, you normally play him with a lot of tanks, so Rage Blade's perfect for stacking up and making use of that front line because he's often going to be the sole damage dealer of the build. Caitlyn is a legendary unit, but she's honestly not that great. If you get a 2-star Caitlyn, it's still a good thing, don't get me wrong, but she's not going to solo carry the game if you get her 2-star. At least not in this patch. She's still going to do some great damage, but Twitch is going to be the main carry of the build. You mainly just play her because she's a sniper. But for positioning, Mundo's always going to be front and center because that's where the experiment hex is. Twitch is going to be on wherever the hex is in the back. Oftentimes it's either in one of the corners or one square off of the corner, and you don't really have too much choice there. It's one of the weaknesses of Twitch comps is that you can't really move him that much. So sometimes people can position around you and put their Elise in front of you, for example. But one way to kind of get around that is to put your range units on the other side and group them up a little bit. So that way the Elise can jump to the other side sometimes. It doesn't always work, but sometimes it does. But pretty much only play this comp with Bruiser Emblem. Just do standard leveling for this and absolutely bonkers if you hit. I wouldn't say it's like S+ if you hit, but it's like pretty S if you hit at least. Experiment Twitch is going to be the next build we have. This one's 5 Experiment, and it's a very similar comp to the one we saw before. Mundo main tank, Twitch main damage dealer, except like you don't need any emblem or anything like that. You could just play 5 Experiment, add in a sniper, add in a Dominator, and call it a day. I'd say the most important thing to have is, again, Rage Blade and red buff on your Twitch. IE is pretty good too. Deathblade also works. And as for Experiment hexes, There are going to be 2 in the back line, 1 in the front line, so Mundo's always going to be front and center, as we said before. Some people are using Zyra, some people are using Urgot as a third experiment. Honestly, I haven't noticed too much of a difference between when I use either of them. I've been watching a lot of streams, I've been asking a lot of other people what their opinions are. Some people swear by Zyra, some people swear by Urgot, and they both think the other person is stupid. So there's no like clear consensus yet. I even have other people saying that it depends on the matchup, but I think that's garbage because I'm pretty sure one is just better than the other. People just haven't figured it out yet. I like personally having the Zyra on the Hex. The reason why is because it makes your abilities deal burn damage, and since I have the red buff on Twitch, burn damage is really good because people are going to be taking damage over time and they can't heal back up, and that's essentially what the red buff is for. So I think if you have red buff, you put the Zyra there. If you don't have red buff, maybe put Urgot there. But again, like, even though I use Zyra more often, I don't really feel that much of a difference when I switch between the two. What really is important in this comp is hitting 2-star Twitch, 2-star Mundo. Nothing else really matters after that. So if you don't have that, like, arguing between Urgot and Zyra is like pretty useless. Another fun thing to try in this build is using Runon's Hurricane. If you get category 5, which is one of the augments, it's pretty good on Twitch because he kind of hits everything, which gives Runon's a bit more value because you can often kill people with your Runon's procs. So that's one thing to look out for whenever you are playing this. But essentially, it's just a 4-cost comp. Get the 2-star of both of them and do well. And if you can't, then tough luck, you know? Should have played a different comp. Next comp up we have is Emissary, Sorcerer, Nami. This is again one of the underrated comps of the patch. I think it's really fun. I've only played it once. I've seen other people play it a couple times, but it's a bit awkward to play. The reason why is because you want to play 4 Emissary, but you also want to reroll 3-cost units. So for all the big brain Bunny Muffins viewers, you might already know what I'm trying to get at. Emissaries are useless if you don't have all 4 of them. So you're gonna end up playing some weak 6 Sorcerer board if you don't have all the Emissary units. You could add in something like a Zyra and a Lux, right? Like your team sucks when you have those 2 units in. So before you get 4 Emissary, you are like a sitting duck. What is the best way to get 4 Emissary? Well, if we check out all the Emissary units, they are a 2-cost, 3-cost, and 2 4-cost. So we need to be level 8 to get optimal rolling odds for Ambessa and Garen. Of course, since we're doing a 3-cost reroll, we're going to be rolling at level 7 a lot. And sometimes you hit both of them, sometimes you don't. What I ended up doing in my games is I take Ambessa or Garen off a carousel no matter what item they have. That way it's easier for me to find them and I can stay level 7. But if you're not lucky enough to do that, you kind of have to give up on the 3 stars, go level 8, find the 4 Emissary, and then roll at 8 for the 3 stars instead. So that's one thing to like keep in mind with this comp. It's very awkward to play because you're going to be playing some crappy 6 Sorcerer board, or maybe Sorcerers with some Watchers out there, and taking a huge beating until you find both Ambessa and Garen. The good news is that there are multiple versions of this comp. So if you get a mix of attack damage and ability power items, this is a build I like to play. Gangplank is going to be the AD item holder, Nami's going to be the AP item holder, and then Swain's going to be the main tank. Garen is going to be the utility tank, so you could do like Redemption, maybe put the Spark on him, and do something like this maybe. But let's say you don't have a lot of Gangplanks, or you don't get any attack damage items. What should you do instead? Well, you can actually place Swain in the backline and turn him into an ability power unit. Most people put like the utility items on him, such as Morellonomicon and Static Shiv, things like that. And then for your tank, you use Elise instead. Elise is nice because, well, you saw it already right here. You get the Blackrose unit with the Scion popping out, and Elise is also just like a very solid unit. You don't need to get her to 3-star. And she provides some CC to your team. So you could put like a Protector's Vow on her, maybe an Adaptive Helm, even like a Thieves Glove is good. And then again, put your other tank items on Garen. Obviously, if you have Static Shiv, you don't need the Ionic Spark because they both do the same thing. So you could put like a Warmogs on him instead. But both versions of these comps work. It just depends what items you're getting. If you get a lot of like regular AP items, you could obviously put them on Swain instead of these like utility items, and then put your utility on their front line, such as like having a Sunfire Cape, Ionic Spark up there. But those are kind of like the 2 ways you play around this. Again, a little awkward because you need to find the emissaries, but most of the time I'm doing a 3-cost reroll and praying I hit both of them. If I'm low health and I'm pretty desperate, or maybe I don't have too many Namis, then I just level up to 8, play around the 4 emissary board, and just pray for like a top 4. Or sometimes you still can hit 3-star 3-costs at level 8. It's just going to cost a bit more gold. But 4 items for Nami, mana item and 2 APs work. I don't really like the Hextech Gunblade. A lot of people are building Hextech Gunblade this set. I like it a lot on Heimerdinger, but on Nami, I prefer having 2 damage items, but honestly, anything works. And then for Swain, my favorite item on him is going to be the Crown Guard. Next build up we have is the Rebel Zoe build. This is one of those vertical comps where you just go really hard into one trait. In this case, it's going to be Rebels. Rebels is really good because if you do ever get 2 Rebel emblems, you can get to 10 Rebel, which is pretty much an auto win. But for every other case, you just go 7. And if you do have the Rebel emblem, it makes it so you don't need to hit Jinx in order to get there. And you can replace Vex, which is a pretty garbage unit in the late game. For your main tank, it's obviously going to be Alawi. Main damage dealer, it's obviously going to be Zoe. And then for Elise, you could put her frontline or backline depending on what items you get, but I like having her in the front a bit more. I have also seen people play a mix of Academy and Sentinel in this build. One sample board could look something like this, where we take the Elise out and we have the Leona, Heimerdinger, and the Vex in order to get Visionary, Academy, and you could also add in another Sentinel. Anyone will do. And then you'd end up putting the Rebel emblem onto your Heimerdinger or whoever you're using as your carry. You don't have to play it like this, but I'm just providing other options because they are out there. Most people are playing something like this with like the Elise. Because if you're playing Heimerdinger, you might as well just go into the regular Heimerdinger Sentinel comp or into the Blackrose comp. It's mainly just because Heimer's OP, not because the comp's OP. But if you are just going regular Rebels, like Zoe's going to be your main carry, just play around her. And to get Sork, just throw in Nami. Nami's an Emissary, so you get like a nice little buff. If you ever need a +1 unit and you don't really know what to put in, Emissary is always like a pretty good option because they give a buff to your whole team. So if you're ever confused on what to play, just like think about using Triss, Nami, Garen, or Ambessa. But very easy comp to play because it's a vertical comp. You just put in all the Rebel units into your team planner. By the way, you could copy the team code by like going to teamfight.lol and then clicking this button over here. And then you just paste it directly into your client by going into like the game lobby, pressing this thing, and then paste your team like that. And it's automatically copied there. You could name this Rebels. Thank you, Bunny Muffins. Okay, it doesn't fit there, but you get the point. But it's a nice little handy tool in case you want to do an easy copy paste. Next build up we have is Emissary, Corki, and Ambessa. Very solid comp if you like Corki. Corki again is more of like a supportish unit. Ambessa is going to be the main carry of this comp, but this comp is really good if you really like to fast 8 and you can afford to do so. It's also decent if you get a Conqueror start because you get Conqueror stacks for your Ambessa, or if you are flexing between Corki and Twitch by building like IE Last Whisper. But in this build here, you're going to be running 4 Emissary, and it's much easier to hit than in the Nami version because you're again going for 4 cost here, so you're going to be level 8 no matter what. It's pretty easy to hit 1-star Garen, 1-star Ambessa, and then line it up with Tristana and Nami. And then Corki is going to be your person in the back line. This comp does run a lot of traits, so augments such as Bronze for Life is really, really good. The Anomaly, which gives you bonuses based on how many traits you have active, also pretty decent. But in general, in this comp, I like running a lot of item augments because you have a lot of different units to itemize on your team because you're running 4 different 4 costs. So extra items always have a use somewhere, either on Corki, Ambessa, Garen, or Vi. Or even some of the Thieves' Gloves augments are pretty good too. But I played this comp a couple times. I can't really explain why, but the comp just works. As long as you get the 2 stars, you can compete with some of the S tier comps, but your late game isn't as big because you're not running that many legendaries. But in the like mid to late game, or like the regular late game, not the super late game, this comp is very, very powerful if you could get the core 3 to 2 star and have like semi-okay items on them. Luckily, again, good items in this comp are pretty easy to come by because for Corki, you don't really need anything too specific. Like you just need a sword or bow on him for the scrap component. And then you don't need IE, you don't need Last Whisper. It could be something like red buff or any AD item in general. For Ambessa, any frontline bruiser item works. Or even just like pure damage items. Like I've seen like IE Ambessa go absolutely ham as well. People put like IE Hodge, but honestly, she doesn't even like desperately need that healing because she has some healing built into her kit. It's not that much, so people obviously do prefer having a Hodge on her. But if you have like full damage on her, let's say you got like an IE and you have like a Giant Slayer or something because you got it off Carousel, like you're not gonna regret a thing. She's still gonna be pumping. And of course, Garen's gonna be your main tank. Literally any tank item can do. And Vi like pretty much can use either tank or bruiser items also. Obviously she prefers the bruiser items, but because she's the 4th person you're itemizing, she doesn't really matter that much. Honestly, just throw a TG on her and call it a day. But pretty much in this build, like any items work. You just need to hit the champion's 2-star and you're gonna be good to go. But again, I like playing this if I have like a Conqueror start, build some stacks for Ambessa, And if I built a lot of AD items or like Bruiser items, then you could go into this too. But next build up we have is like the more like regular Corki build, which is with the scrap build. Honestly, I think the Emissary version's a little bit better, but if you get scrap emblem or if you get like one of the scrap augments, it's called like top of the scrap heap or something like that, where every component you turn into an item, you get like a free component after you do it like 6 times, I think it is. Then yeah, you're gonna be going scrap, right? Or maybe you hit an early rumble, you're gonna be going scrap. And it's still like a fine Corki build, but I don't think Corki is like a really good like main carry. He's definitely more of like a secondary carry, and Echo, not the best main carry either. So there's just like no true like solid #1 carry. Like, don't get me wrong, Corki's a good unit and everything, but like if you compare his carry potential to like Heimerdinger, it's a lot lower. Or if you compare it to Twitch, because Twitch is also attack damage, right? Like Twitch can solo carry in the experiment builds and in the Bruiser Mundo builds, whereas Corki can't. Luckily for Corki, he's a scrap unit. So because he's scrap, you could have items on a lot more units. So that's why you can itemize secondary carries very easily. So maybe that's their intention when they balance a game, honestly. Like because Corki's a scrap, you have to have a secondary carry with him. Luckily for you, if you do get Rumble 2-star, he's an absolute monster if you put AP items on him. But Rumble 1-star is obviously still good if you're going scrap, but not the best thing ever. Echo, again, can't really solo carry either. So that's why I do prefer playing this Ambessa Corki build over the 6 scrap. But again, if you get scrap emblem, if you get a scrap augment, or you hit an early rumble, you pretty much have to go this version here. Just pair it with like Alawi as like a tank, Elise as a tank. Also, you could flex between the two. Whoever is 2-star, that's who you itemize. And then for your anomaly, drop it on Corki. But if you have like a 2-star Echo and 1-star Corki, put it on Echo. If you have a 2-star one of the other 4 costs and you get a tank one, you could put it on them too. By the way, I also do have like recommended scrap components down here, pretty useful guide. It's on the website bunnymuffins.lol/meta, but I have also heard that for anomalies, they are going to find a way to kind of stop people from hard forcing an anomaly. I think the easiest solution is just limit us from re-rolling to like maybe 10 rerolls or something like that. Or you could have it so that every time you reroll, it increases the cost by 1 gold. That'd probably be a really cool way to do it in my opinion. But I know a lot of people, they are just like hard forcing certain anomalies on certain units. For example, on Malzahar, I really like the chill one. On Violet, I like the 4-star one. On Camille, I like invisibility a lot. But they are going to be changing that in the future from what I hear. Whether it happens in next patch or 2 patches from now, who knows? We'll just have to keep our eyes out. But next build up we have is Visionary Corki. Not that great of a comp, and it's not because the comp sucks, it's more so because Heimerdinger is so contested. So if you are playing Heimerdinger, I highly recommend playing the Blackrose Flex or the Heimerdinger Flex instead. Nothing wrong with Visionary Heimerdinger. If you get Visionary Emblem, like, yeah, go for it. But you're pretty much playing like a gimped version of the Blackrose comp or the Heimerdinger Sentinel comp. Still solid, but you kind of need to hit everything for free, or like use the Visionary Emblem to kind of win streak in the early game. So if you're in the early game and you're on stage 2 and you see the Visionary Crest augment, take it only if you have like Morgana 2 Vex 2, or like Morgana 2 and like a Rel and maybe a 2-star Singe to pair with the Rel, because you kind of wanted to use it to like win streak with. And if you don't, and you still want to play Heimerdinger because you have good Heimerdinger items, just play Blackrose, take a different augment, and go from there. But still an okay comp. I'm not going to say it's the greatest, but it definitely is playable. Enforcer Caitlyn Vi and Sorcerer Zoe, I'm going to group these 2 comps into the same category because they're a little weird to play. You need an emblem on them to get to 8 Enforcer easily. Like if we type in Enforcer champions over here, you'll see that there are just 7 of them. So you need an emblem and you need to hit a legendary in order to get to 8 Enforcer. Same thing for Sorcerer, right? If we type in Sorcerers, we're going to see that there are 7 of them. So you need an emblem and a legendary to get to 8. So only play these comps if you are able to fast 9, because you need that copy of that legendary unit to get your power spike. So all the items you see here, like, they don't really matter that much. It's mainly built around the emblem and getting the legendary. But again, the same rules apply as we talked about in Visionary. If you can kind of win streak with these comps in the early game, because you play around like maybe 4 Enforcer early on or 6 Enforcer in the mid game, or with Sorcerers, you play around 4 Sorc or 6 Sorc, then that's a good time to pick these augments to get the +1 emblem. But if you're not doing that, your life total is going to be too low that you can't reliably get to level 9 and hit the legendary unit and hit like 2-star Vi, for example, or 2-star Zoe down here, that you lose like a lot of power in your team. But one good thing about the Enforcer Caitlyn comp is that Twisted Fate is actually like a decent item holder in the mid game during stage 3, and so is Camille. So if you're playing Camille reroll, but then you get contested, and then you see on stage 3 that you get a Enforcer emblem, you could easily switch into this comp, because Camille items can go on buy, and you can use Camille to kind of solidify your mid game. Twisted Fate is good if you get like random AP items, he can hold them pretty well. And if you get like a Spear of Shojin, he could hold it until you get Caitlyn. For the Sorcerer comp, it's a little bit different because there aren't really any like crazy rerolls you could pivot from this into. Like if you're going reroll Nami and Swain, like no one's contesting you on that ever because no one's playing it. So you're pretty much good enough to just like go for that comp and never look back. But in terms of item holders, like Nami's pretty good in the mid game, but a little expensive because Camille's a 2-cost unit and Nami's a 3-cost unit. So it's much easier to get Camille 2-star than it is to get Nami 2-star. But if you're able to get to 6 Sorcerer and get like maybe 1 tank in the front, maybe like 2-star Vlad, and then 2-star Zyra or Lux to hold your items, there is a chance to be able to hold your stage 3 well enough in order to power level into a fast 8, maybe get a Zoe, and then go to 9, get a LeBlanc. It's a little more difficult than all those comps we played in previous sets where you pretty much always can get to the 8 trait very, very easily, and that's just not the case anymore. But if you do hit it, the reward is pretty good. It's not like auto win or anything, but it's like very solid. So that's one thing to keep in mind when playing both of these comps. Next one up we have is Conqueror. Conqueror only play from like Giga Conqueror spot in the beginning. If I get Conqueror emblem and I have like 2-star Draven, 2-star Darius, then I go for it. If not, like it's not really worth going for. But if you do get it, it's like pretty unstoppable because you get all the free loot from Conqueror. The Conqueror units get stronger as you get more stacks, and it snowballs really, really quickly. But you have to know how to snowball, so you have to play pretty aggressively at the start in order to get that going, because if you win your first round, it's easier to win the next round, which is easier to win the round after that, etc, etc. So if you make one mistake in the beginning with this comp, or you go for it in like a suboptimal spot, you're gonna get punished really hard. So again, I cannot stress this enough. Only go for this build if you have upgrades at the start and can actually win rounds to stack up your Conquerors, because essentially Conquerors gain stacks based on how many war chests you open, and if you don't open any chests, well, they're going to be pretty weak, and then you can't open more chests. Items for this comp, your main carry is going to be Ambessa, so just like generic frontline bruiser items on her. Some people run like the Gangplank carry in the back with the Conqueror emblem, but you could play him and then swap it to a legendary later on. If you don't get a Gangplank, you could always use like one of the quick strikers also to use a Conqueror emblem. So that's going to be either TF, Akali, or Nocturne. And then in the late game, you have Mordekaiser to kind of do his own thing. Throw all your leftover items on him. And if you get another 2-star random legendary, switch the Conqueror emblem onto them and then throw 2 items on them, they will carry as well. But very good comp, but you can't really play this in too many situations. Next build up we have is Form Swapper, Gangplank, and GP. I mean, with all the 4 Form Swapper builds, because there's going to be the Elise one later on too, they're only good because you hit Jace. They're not good on their own. So if you have some way to guarantee hitting Jace, these comps are going to be viable. If not, like pretty much you could just play the same build but play it with the Nami build that we looked at before, where it's like Swain 3, Gangplank 3, and Nami 3, and then play that until you hit Jace, and you could pivot into it if you want. Or maybe you hit an early Jace and you have a 2-star Gangplank already and you haven't leveled up too much, you could consider going for a Gangplank 3 and playing this 4 Form Swapper build. But pretty difficult to hit. You're probably not going to play that comp that much, maybe 1 out of every like 50 games, but solid when you do. Pit Fighter Vi, don't do this. Pretty bad right now because all the Violet players, all the family players are taking all your Pit Fighters. Form Swapper Elise, kind of already talked about that, and that is going to be it for that section down here. For the special tier, which is all the like weird augments and stuff, I'd say like Mad Scientist Singe is like the main one to look out for. Him with Morello and Gunblade is absolutely devastating combo. Just play it with 6 Sentinel. A lot of people can't stop him. Let's look back up at the list up here. All the trait augments, again, like only take them if it's actually going to upgrade your units. Never go for them if you don't have the units for them. Chem Baron Cashout, very fun comp, very risky to play. This is kind of like one version of the Cashout board you can look at. You need to play 3 Chem Baron because only Chem Barons can use the Chem Baron items. So just throw them on like Savika and Silco. Sometimes Renni also, if it's a tanky one. And then you just play random units that kind of complement them. So you need a Pit Fighter for Savika, you need a Bruiser for Renni, and you need a Dominator for Silco. Try to get a 500 cash out. 400's okay, but you definitely want to only play it if you are able to get to 500. Built different, playable, not that great. Built different comp's gonna just be any 4-cost unit with items, whoever you 2-star. I like building generic damage and tank items so that I could play whichever carry I hit. And then for your very last item, you kind of tailor one for them. And that's pretty much gonna be it for the tier list this week. Again, like, I think it's actually a pretty decent game right now. There's lots of different things you could go for, and everything does work. You just need to find the right spots for them. So one funny thing that happened earlier on in this week was that one of my friends linked me this match history, and it looked like this. And it was a rank 1 player at the time, and everyone in that Discord server was like, holy cow, like, what is he playing? Like, I need to just like hard force whatever that person's playing. And normally when you look at something like that, you're like, oh, they're like hard forcing Camille every game, or they're like, last patch everyone was playing family with 4-star Violet, and everyone's like, oh, just play 4-star Violet every game. And then we looked at this person's match history and we're like, wait a minute, he's playing Flex. We can't just like copy that without a brain. And I found that so funny because it's like one of those patches where it's like, yeah, you actually have to play the game now instead of just like hard forcing one comp every single game. I feel like I'm gonna eat my words on this because maybe tomorrow a new comp gets invented and then everyone hard forces that. But I'd say like right now, it's actually like a lot of different options out there, dare I say it. But I hope everyone did enjoy this video. Let me know what your favorite comps are in the comments section down below. And let me know what your approach is going to be for this patch. Are you going to be an AD player, AP player, hard force only, reroll, flex player, things like that. But for all your TFT comp needs, head on over to the website bunnymuffins.lol/meta. And for all your data needs, go to teamfight.lol and use the stats section, maybe the leaderboard section, or like the team builder here. I think this is the best team builder because it has pretty much every customization you could want. Like you could select where the experiment X is, you could select which champion you want the anomaly on, you could 3-star them, etc., things like that. You could even show like a best in slot item. For example, on Twitch, maybe you think Rage Blade's mandatory, you could right click it, mark it as a core item, it gets highlighted. It's definitely like the most comprehensive team builder out there, so definitely go ahead and check that out. But that's gonna be it for me today. Hopefully you all enjoyed that, and I'll see you all next time.